and we're going to talk about real beach talks. Two subjects, both a little bit controversial. The first one is 21 reasons why expireds are better than for sale by owners. And if there's any expired listings watching, this is about you. If there's any agents watching, then we are going to talk about why you should be focusing on expireds more than for sale by owners. Next week, we're going to talk about 21 reasons why for sale by owners are better than expireds. So, am I tricking you? No. Okay, so what is an expired listing? An expired listing is a listing that has failed to sell for some reason. The first reason why expireds are better than for sale by owners is, number one, they know what it's like to be lied to. So most likely the property didn't sell because it was priced wrong, was in poor condition, or any number of things. But generally, when a listing expires and I go in and get an expired listing, I find out generally that the agent said something to them that either wasn't true or didn't happen. So trust is the currency of the future. So with expired listings, it's very important that they trust you. All right, so how are you going to gain trust from them? We'll talk about that in a little while. Number two, they already know a little bit about what agents do. So a for sale by owner, all the for sale by owner knows that you do is charge a big commission and don't do anything for it except hold an open house. So they know from the presentations before they listed it before what agents do. So if you make a presentation that says what you're going to do, generally with Century 21 Beggins, we do more than most agents. So you have a bigger likelihood of getting the listing. Number three, they know a little bit about what agents don't do. Or really, they know a lot about what agents don't do, because the agents didn't do something that caused the house not to sell. So they're more educated generally than for sale by owners, and therefore easier to deal with. Number four, they were sold once, so they can be sold again. They signed a contract, so they know what's involved in signing up with you. Number five, most likely they were not communicated with properly. They weren't kept up to date on number of showings, what people said about the showings, so they were not communicated in the way they wanted to be communicated with. One of the reasons you avoid this in the future is to ask them how they would like to be communicated with. Would you like feedback on every showing? Would you like to know how many showings, what days they're showing, what we actually did? The reports that we get every week on number of showings, would you like to have that sent to you? Number six, we know whether it was priced well or not. So when a listing is expired, you know that the price that it expired at was probably not the right price for it to be, so you already have a leg up in that. Number seven, we know the geographical agent location of the agent that has listed the property in the past. What do we find out many times when a listing expires about where the agent was located that listed the property? You find out that they're from somewhere else. They could be a St. Petersburg agent that's trying to list something on the beach and they had a hard time pricing it and they made some mistakes. Or they're a Tampa agent that wanted to get a high-priced property. Number eight, we know the strong and the weak points of the last company. So think about the agent, where the agent's located. You can look up the agent, see what their strong points are and their weak points. And in addition, you can look up the company that listed the property last. If it's a little tiny company or a big company, you'll get information on what to pass through to the new expired before you list them. Number 9, the phone numbers on expired listings are hard to get, aren't they? All right. That could be a good point because other agents give up when they're trying to find the phone numbers of the expired listing. So the best thing to do with an expired listing is to do what? Go to the door, knock on the door, because very few agents want to knock on doors. If you don't like to knock on doors, which most of us don't, an easy door to knock on is an expired listing, because most likely you're going to find out when you go to that door if the person lives there, if it's rented. You'll find out easier if it was sold before, so it will allow you to decide whether to keep on contacting them, or you find out it was sold 3 months ago and it didn't show up, and you'll know to get rid of them and focus on the next one. Number 10, they received no service before, so they appreciate a home visit more. So many times the agent has never been to the house except for a showing, and if the house was overpriced, many times there won't be a showing. So if you show up at the door of an expired listing, they say, well, at least this agent showed up. My last agent did not show up. Number 11, urgency is increased because the house didn't sell. So if it was on the market for 6 months, mostly if the seller wanted to sell and listed it for 6 months, they made plans to do something in 6 months. Their plans had to change because it didn't sell. So the urgency will increase generally on expired listings. Motivation is increased because the house didn't sell, is number 12. So they're more likely to sell at a better price if it expired, because they know what price it did not sell at before. Which leads into number 13, which is price reductions are easy. When you're doing a strategic pricing analysis on the property, one of the expired listings in your spa will be their house. So they will know that that particular price is not a good one. Number 14, and this is important, our spa strategic pricing analysis is more appreciated by expireds than anybody, because they were out in the wilderness with most agents that are using RPR or some other way to do a competitive market analysis. Our spa will give them 15 up-to-the-minute comps on what's on the market now, what's sold recently, and what didn't sell. So with the Wallet 5 dart, they can throw the dart and pick a price that's in one of those 3 categories. Number 15, they don't have the time or the desire for a new career as a real estate agent. If they're an expired listing, they know some of the work that the old lister did. And if they're thinking about being a for sale by owner, which very frankly, most expireds don't become for sale by owners after the listing expires, because they know the work that an agent has to go through to get the house sold, or in this case, not to get it sold. 16, it's easier to pre-qualify them as prospects. This is a good point, because expireds, when you look them up, many times you don't know what happened. And when you're looking at expireds, many times they will have sold, or they changed their minds, or there was a death in the family, or some reason where they absolutely do not want to sell. So you're on to the next prospect a lot quicker because you know that the property is not going to be on the market. They rented it for the next 6 months, so they don't want to talk to you for 6 months. You make a note, but it's more efficient to deal with expireds. Number 17, they take fewer calls to close. Now, one of the things we're going to talk about is how many contacts it takes to close an expired or for sale by owner. And on an average, it's less on an expired because a lot of the calls that were made by previous agents that listed the property, they explained to the seller some of the answers to the questions that you would have to go over with a for sale by owner and answer those. They've been answered in the past. Number 18, all the other agents are afraid of them. So you find that there aren't that many people that call an expired listing after it's been expired a short term. So generally, if you're looking back a couple of months on expired listings, you'll find that immediately when they expired, agents will call them very quickly, but then quickly they lose interest in them and don't follow up. So I've said for years that with big ticket items, it takes an average of 7 callbacks to get a closed deal. If you're selling airplanes or apartment buildings or something big ticket item, you have to gain the trust of the client because they're spending a lot of money with you. So trust is the currency of the future. So you have to be persistent with them. 19, when you get one in your niche area, your celebrity status is enhanced. So if you're a farmer or a niche marketer and you happen to secure an expired listing in that geographical area or in that niche, you become a rock star because other people saw the other agent's sign up on the property, and now they saw that sign go down and they see yours went up. So they say, man, that agent must be a lot better than the last agent. Number 20, they sell and they close faster. So something that's been on the market for a long time and did not sell, and you reprice it, you most likely will reprice it at a saleable level. The urgency of the expired to sell is generally greater than normal people selling, so they will sell and therefore close faster. Number 21, they're more grateful when you sell after the other agent couldn't. So they know that the other agent didn't do a good job and you came in and in 2 weeks you had a sale and you're the rock star. Now, this was 21 reasons why expireds are better than FSBOs, but they were so great, these 21 reasons, that I'm going to go to 22. They are more apt to be short sale clients than other sellers. Why would they be more anxious to be more apt to be short sale clients than other sellers? I wrote this in 2011. So you understand why I put that one in there? Because there were a ton of short sales and foreclosures. And that's going to be a short introduction to the next topic to piggyback on top of this. 23, when you are the first to call, you make a great impression. So if you're the first one that calls after something expired and they've been trying to get feedback from the agent for 6 months and they weren't getting return calls or weren't communicated with properly, and you're the first one to call after it expired, they say, now maybe I have a chance to hire a good agent because they got to me right away.
Wouldn't they be angry?
Sometimes. Which would sometimes they would be angry if you're the first one to call because the wound is still open because the thing expired and all that stuff, but they're going to remember. It's like your first date. So if you want to do it, that's good. 24, you can call them earlier in the morning than you can with for sale by owners. That piggybacks on 23. where you're going to make people angry if you call them too early, but the poor expired wasn't communicated with ever anyway, so you can call them at 9 o'clock or at 8:30 a lot easier than you can call for sale by owner. 25, you can disqualify them quicker than for sale by owners, because if they are not selling, they can tell you very simply that our plans have changed, we've rented it out for a year, we've already moved to Michigan, and we're not going to sell it for another year, so call me back then, and now you have a lead for a year from now. So then 26, I added, they're so good that we couldn't stop at 21 reasons. So we got 26 reasons here why expireds are better than for sale by owners. And then I usually spell check my documents that I write. Number 20 is they're so easy to understand that spell check shows a grade 4.2 on this list. So anybody with an education of the 4th grade or the second months into the 4th grade can understand the 20-something things that I said about expireds. So, any questions about why expireds are better than FSBOs? Next week, we're going to flip it around, and I'm going to give you 21 reasons why FSBOs are better than expireds. Now, in our company, we have 5 different pillars. The 2 most important and the easiest way to get business in the real estate industry is either for sale by owners or expireds, because they're the only 2 of the 5 pillars that we know wants to make the decision to sell. One because they tried to sell and fail, and the other because they didn't want to pay you a commission. So if we're going to deal with expireds, how do we do them? If we're going to make 7 contacts to get a closed deal, that's an average to sell a big ticket item. We have to figure out how to manage a database of expired listings that will allow us to easily manage 7 callbacks average to keep track of which ones we are more apt to call and when we should call them. So from experience with top agents that have got expired listings, we start out with a list of 20. Now, how are we going to find 20 expireds in this market where there's very, very little inventory? We're going to search MLS for a geographical area of expired listings. If you go too far, and if you think that you're going to have to make 7 contacts to get a closed deal, and some of them are going to be in person, why pick an expired listing that's 20 miles away from where you're located, either your home or your farm or your office, wherever you're going? So pick an area that is close to where you're working or in the geographical farm that you're working. Well, you'll say, well, if we search expired listings in 33708, which is Madeira Beach, Reddington area, you go back 6 months, excuse me, you're not going to find many expired listings. So let's say you find 6 in 6 months in 33708, but you got to find 20. So what would you do? Number 1 would be go back further. Number 2 would be to expand the geographical area. I like number 1 better because if you go back further with expired listings, you will find more of them because the market was different 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, 4 years ago. Now, you might ask, why would I contact an expired listing that expired 4 years ago? Well, in my 21 reasons, I said they're easy to disqualify. So to contact a for sale by owner that expired 4 years ago, and you say, hey, I noticed your listing expired 4 years ago, and we need business because inventory is low, have your have you changed your mind, or are you still interested in selling? Because over the last 4 years, what happened to prices in our area? They went up a little, they went up a lot. They went up a lot. How many people do you think know that it went up a lot? Not too many, because the only way they have to search is on Zillow and Trulia and all those, and they're not going to get valid figures there. So we want to go back as far as we have to go to get 20. Now we put 20 for sale, expired listings on a spreadsheet. What do we do with the 20 on a spreadsheet? Because if we're going to get 20 and work on those 20 and do 7 contacts average to get a closed deal, that's 7 times 20, 140 contacts to people that you don't have any phone numbers on. You're going to be working your butt off to try to get these done. All right, so what we do with this spreadsheet of 20, we contact as many as we can find until we find 5. And then we take the 5 that we find that we've contacted that we think we might want to work with, and we put them on another spreadsheet of 5. And the spreadsheet's called a Universal Contact Form, a UCF. It's a form that has 20 lines on it, so you use one form with 20 expired, and you use another one, and you take the top 5 lines, and you put the 5 expired on that you want to work with, because on the spreadsheet it has 7 little blocks where you can put a notice of when you contacted them. So you can look at that spreadsheet of 5 and see that you've, on number 4, you've made 3 contacts. On the 3rd one, you've made 2. On the first one, you made 4. On the second one, you made 6. So you know that you're getting closer and closer on those 5. So you're only working on the 5, and you have the 20 off on the side, because that's your basic database. Once you get to your number of contacts that you get to on your 5, to where the guy says, I'm not interested, or I just listed with ABC Realty, now you put a line through them because they're no longer your prospect, then you only have 4 on that list. So what are you going to do? You got to get 1 more on your list of 5, because you're always working with 5. So you lined out 1, so you go to your 20 and you contact them again and take one of those, put them in your 5, and then you forget about the 20. So you'll see that that spreadsheet with the 5 on it, you'll be using that one spreadsheet for probably 6 months to a year before it's filled up. And at the end of the year, you'll see the lines through on your spreadsheet of 5 that out of the 5 that you started with, it's now filled up with 20. You put lines through those, but you got 2 or 3 of the listings out of the 20. The rest you disqualified. Then you start it over. Is that fairly clear? Okay. The one thing that we have to add that most people don't realize, that you go on Matrix, is it, to get listed, expired, but not relisted. Because if you don't put that extra field in and say expired but not relisted, you're going to get tons of people, and you're going to be calling them, and they're listed with somebody else, and you're not allowed to prospect with other people, other people's listing. So does that 27 things make it a little bit more attractive to you to focus on expireds? There's one thing that's really important. With expireds and for sale by owners, the really good agents build their business on expired and good and for sale by owners. Why do they do that? What do you think? They know they want to sell. Expireds and for sale by owners are prospects that are real prospects. If you're farming to a bunch of cold calls in your farm, you only have about a 20% chance that they might be interested. With for sale by owners and expired, you have a much greater percentage chance that they would be interested. Now, the reason that big and very successful agents focus on them is because they're hot shots and they know how to make a presentation better and all this other stuff. But there's one big flaw in the really good agents. They lose focus. So the really good agents will generally, from experience, I've found that when I go up against a really good agent that has been calling and expired, they generally stop calling after 2 or 3 contacts because I guess they feel, well, I'm so good, if you're not going to list with me, the hell with you, so I'll go on to another one. But if it takes 7 contacts to get a closed deal when you're selling a big ticket item, the slow and steady wins the race. So you're going to eliminate the really experienced agents because they're not going to have the patience to deal with expired and for sale by owners for the length of time that it will take to get them listed. Make sense? All right. I want you to write down 3 letters. FUD. FUD stands for fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So when we did these seminars over the past bunch of years that I did in Madeira Beach office in St. Pete and Apollo Beach on the radio show that I had, we talked a lot about trust being the you being a trusted advisor and trust being the currency of the future. Why do you think trust is the currency of the future? It's the money of the future. You ever been looking up a product on the internet and you go and you look at reviews, or you go to Yelp to a restaurant and you look at the reviews on the restaurant and they're all 5-star reviews. This is the best place in the world and all this other stuff. The chances are that you would not pick that restaurant. Why? Because the first thing you think is it's fake reviews. So most people, when they're looking up reviews, they appreciate the ones that are not top, that say, well, they tried real hard, but the food was not up to standard. And then you will tend to say, well, most of the reviews are higher, and there's a few 3s and a couple of 2s, and there's 1 1. But you know what? We'll try that restaurant anyway, because anybody can make mistakes because people are basically honest. So, you know, when you see something it's all perfect, 5 stars all the way, you're generally going to stay away from that. So if you as an agent are a trusted advisor, and trust is the currency of the future, if they trust you, that's the most important thing that you can do. So telling them the truth as you see it, even if they think that you're not right, but they know that you're saying what you think and you have reasons to back up what you think, they will tend to do business with you. So what do you think happens to making a decision when fear, uncertainty, and doubt come into your decision-making process? What do you think you would tend to do? 0, the hand went up. So when we're afraid of what might happen and we know we should do something, but we're not sure what to do and we're getting conflicted stories back and forth, we tend to do nothing. Now, I have been an agent for a long time, and I have a feeling about the real estate business, and I'm not reticent about expressing my feelings, but sometimes it causes people to say, that guy doesn't know what he's talking about. But I am in the field more than I'm in management. So I'm talking to people every day about what's happening in the local real estate market. And for me, I'm talking about the beaches. And for the last many, many years, I've been focusing on beach properties, but more and more every year, what's happening off the beach has some effect on what's happening on the beach. And in the last 10 years or so, what's been happening in the world has been affecting what is happening on the beaches. And I would say in the last 10 years, after the last downturn, nothing's been affecting us more than the world economy on our beach properties. And on our 27 miles of beaches from 16 little towns, and I've classified the towns from Tierra Verde up to Island Estates and Clearwater, 27 miles of beach. And we're looking at prices going up to unprecedented levels. Right now, beachfront property along the Gulf of Mexico is selling for about $30,000 a front foot. So at $30,000 a front foot, that's $15,000 a front foot than the beach properties were selling for in the bottom of the market. So double beachfront. Now, on our barrier islands, we have beachfront, we have canal front, and we have non-waterfront properties. I tell you almost every week that a 50-foot lot non-waterfront is worth an average of $200,000. The same lot on the water is worth about $400,000, and the same lot on the Gulf of Mexico is $1,500,000. Same piece of dirt. These prices seem outlandish until we compare them with Atlantic Ocean prices. They're less than half. Until we compare them to Naples prices, they're about half. Until we compare them to Sarasota prices, they're lower than Sarasota prices. If we compare them to the next geographical area, which is the Panhandle, they're the cheapest in the state of Florida, except for maybe the Panhandle, which may be a little bit cheaper. So here we're conflicted. If the land prices along the barrier islands in Pinellas County, Florida, are cheaper than the land prices anywhere in the state of Florida, is it an anomaly, or is Pinellas County the cheapest place to buy waterfront property in the state of Florida? We can compare the prices, and they're, as I say, they are the cheapest in the state of Florida when you look at what you get on barrier island properties here. Especially when you compare it to the same size lot on the mainland, which is $20,000 for the same lot that's $200,000 not on the water over here. So when I talk about real estate here being affected more about what's happening in the world, then we look at Vancouver, British Columbia, that is in an incredible real estate bubble, or was until the government put a 15% tax on any foreigner that bought real estate in Vancouver. Their sales dropped 95% in 1 month. The sales were mostly from people from other parts of the world that were getting out because of economic problems in the other parts of the world. Where? China. Oh, economic problems in China. We're going to talk about that in a minute. So the money that was going into Vancouver then went to where? Toronto. and formed a huge bubble in Toronto, where the median price a couple of months ago of a two-bedroom house, median price is $1 million in Toronto. Bad weather, cold weather. At least Vancouver is kind of like a little bit northern California, beautiful city, than Toronto. So Toronto has instituted a tax on foreigners also. So now we have people from all over the world that want to buy cheap property, but property isn't cheap anymore. It's in huge bubbles. So the bubble that was in Vancouver and Toronto is now in New York. God, New York is now in Miami. Okay, so now we're getting closer to home. So if your lot prices are over double in Miami than they are over here. I lived in Miami for 20 years. I moved there because it was too crowded. And the water was colder than it is here. So it was better for me to be on the West Coast. So now we're finding that the people from Miami, who are mostly Northeast type people, are starting to buy over here. So from a real estate standpoint, we're saying, oh, our prices are better than anywhere in the state of Florida. Come over here and buy. Well, is it a good time to buy or is it a good time to sell? Well, what I found from being in the field every day is I'm dealing with people who have in our towns older homes that are flood prone. The homes are too big for them. The homes are too old for them. Their kids aren't coming down from New Jersey anymore. They're not wanting to go up there too much. They got to get out of the big house, but they have to buy another house, as we talked about a couple weeks ago. So the dilemma is that they can't find another house to buy, and they're uncertain about how they would buy it. They're uncertain about whether if they sell their house, they sell it too cheap because they think the market's going to go up and they're not sure how high. And they're not sure that if they sell right now, that the market won't keep going up and then they'll be out of a home and they won't be able to qualify or buy a more expensive home. So therefore, FUD kicks in. Fear, uncertainty, and doubt. So they do nothing. So we had 8 months inventory here a few months ago. We're now down to 3 months inventory. Now, is there really only 3 months of inventory, or is there 8 months of inventory when we consider the closet inventory or the FUD inventory? Is there a deluge of people out there that want to sell and really should sell, and some that have to sell, but they won't sell because of fear, uncertainty, and doubt? Article I wrote in the Paradise News in April was entitled "Time to Cash Out" with a question mark. Now, as a broker, I put in the end of my articles that since most opinions about real estate can be supported by facts, you can take everything I said and you can have some other broker, other agent, or economist tell you the direct opposite. So since most opinions can be supported by facts, I'll inform you to the best of my ability so you can unconfuse the facts to your personal advantage. Then I start the article out with, since nobody knows the top or the bottom of the market, forget about buying or selling there. So all this fear about if you need to sell and you have personal circumstances that you need to consider, find an agent that you trust and ask the agent the answer to the questions that might alleviate some of your fears, to which we really don't know the answers because we can get conflicting answers from everybody. But I'm going to spend a few minutes and talk about the second part of my talk today, which is based on fear, uncertainty, and doubt. And It's entitled Six Bubble Breakers, a Peak in October. So this is a newsletter by Harry S. Dent. And some of you guys have followed him. I've been following him for a long time because the basic premise that he comes up with, I believe in. And that premise is that demographic trends determine what's happening in any economy. So the chunking it way down in basic terms is that my generation is wealthier or was wealthier than my kids' generation. And my kids' generation are more affluent than my grandkids. So I'm 73, so I'm right outside the baby boomer generation, of which 10,000 people a day are turning 65. It's a fact that when people turn 65, they don't spend as much money as they did when they were 45. In fact, 46 is generally demographically the time in someone's life where they're spending the most money because their business is kicking butt. They're about to buy the great new Tesla or the Maserati or whatever, the bigger house, all that stuff. Their health is good, and that's the peak of their buying. Once they hit 65, they're selling stuff. The demographic trends in the United States, with 10,000 people turning 65 every day, this means that people are starting to retire. They're starting to worry about where they're going to go. So Harry Dent has built his whole economic forecast thing built on demographic trends throughout the world. Now, why am I using demographic trends for real beach talks? Because it's a hyper market of demographic trends right here, because the average house along the 16 little towns on our barrier islands is 40 years old, 35, 40 years old, out of 49,000 homes and condos on the beaches, of which about 20,000 are single family homes. 75% of them are below the floodplain. So they were built below the floodplain, so they were built in the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, all built below the floodplain. So basically, they're tear downs. Just like the demographic trend is that as people get older, they don't spend as much money. So if you go back, look at the demographic trends, the people that are living in these 30, 40, 50-year-old houses are older people that really need to get rid of the houses. So what Harry Dent is talking about, when we had the last crash, which I say was on November 15th of 2005 at 8 o'clock at night, because when the crash happened, the downturn in the market, it happened very, very quickly. And it was mostly built on a real estate bubble. Banking and real estate is what caused the last crash. Now, Harry Dent is talking about a banking problem, a real estate problem, bubble, a student loan bubble, a demographic bubble, a world bubble. And so he outlines the 6 bubbles that are all poised to break either now or in up to a year from now. So since nobody can predict the top or the bottom of the market, forget about buying or selling there. So if you look at your own personal situation, see if you are prepared to handle another downturn like the last one, which, not trying to be negative, and I'm not, because I've been through 4 recessions, the next recession will just be a normal economic thing that happens, which is like a cleansing of the economy. We know in the real estate business, many times through all the recessions, we've actually done better in real estate because we have well-trained agents. And when the signs of a crash are coming, real estate agents in this country get out of the business quicker than the market has ever crashed in the past. So at the top of the market, there were 3,000 licensed real estate agents in the United States. At the bottom of the market, there were 900,000. There are always about 5 million sales a year in this country, whether they be increasing prices, 5 million sales, short sales, 5 million sales, foreclosures, 5 million sales, whatever. They're transactions that real estate agents and brokers make money on. So I'm not afraid of a downturn because it cleans out the weak and allows the strong to get better. And gradually at the next bottom of the market, you'll start building up into a whole new economy, which everyone will do better. But real estate brokers don't ever want to talk to a client about there may be some reasons why you shouldn't sell or you shouldn't buy in this market. And you'll get in trouble, and I get in trouble for writing my articles when I predict this stuff. I'm not predicting anything that hasn't happened before through facts. So here's what Harry's saying. 6 bubbles. There are at least 6 things brewing, any one of which, if not a combination of them all, which they could all happen at one time, could strike in the second half of 2017. Whoa. When is the second half of 2017? We in it, pal. Any one of which, while there have been no recent technical indicators that such a top is imminent, that could change just after the next correction in the market, which I think is most likely to hit between mid-July and late August. Oh, what's today? It's not even mid-July, it's past that. So he's saying the next correction in the stock market, which will not be huge, but it will be huge enough to maybe trigger some other things. He says that's when we'd be looking for divergences of key indices, especially small stock caps, which is most likely to occur around mid to late October. So the prediction is a correction in the next month, and then a big correction in as early as October. I'm only bringing this up because this is only one person that I follow of about 8 that have all said around October it looks like something may be happening. Now, does that mean it's going to happen? No, there's so many things happening in the world that could change that, but it's unlikely when you put 6 bubbles, one on top of the other, all being fairly shaky, that you may have a bigger tendency to have a downturn than we did in the last bubble, which was mostly just banks and real estate. So the first one that he's talking about is President Trump. And basically, he's saying that Trump has more resistance than any president before him. Why is it happening that they're giving him such a hard time? That's dependent upon your view of President Trump. But what's happening is they're stalling any progress that's made in the economy by both Republicans and Democrats fighting against whatever Trump is saying. So he's saying that that is a bubble breaker that could cause a big bubble, because once all the Trump supporters fail to support Trump anymore and team up with the people that don't support him, then that could cause insecurity around the other areas and cause the stock market, people to pull their money out of the stock market and things like that. Bubble breaker number 2, vanishing job growth. The U.S. is barely expanding because of demographic trends since 2007. That's basically people are getting older. The younger generations are not having as many kids, so we're not having more additions to the workforce, and vanishing job growth from technology, from factories automating, all these things that you know about. But when you start putting them all together, you see a trend happening. The third bubble breaker, Greece and Italy default, which is, to most people in this country, we don't care what's happening over there, but it's critical. And what he says is that if Italy leaves the EU, that they'll default on their debt, and that is half of Germany's debt. So if countries start leaving the Union, then you'll cause some bankruptcies to happen in Europe, which now the whole world is more one than it ever has been before. So what happens in one country can affect another country and come right down to our own hyper location, which is the beaches in Pinellas County or wherever you're working. Bubble breaker number 4, insane stock evaluations. Right now, the stocks are trading at 30-something times earnings. That means people are putting money into stocks because they don't know where else to put their money in. And these companies their earnings to the ratio of what they're worth is so high. And he shows 2 graphs, one of in 29 where we were at 32 times price to earnings, and one at the top of the last cycle where we crashed at 44%, and we're almost to there now in the stock market right now. That's why he's predicting a slight decline in the next weeks or months or so. But you can see if the PE ratios in the stock market get higher and higher, at some point people would say, this is insane. Why would I put any more money in a company that is not making any money? So we can look at companies like Redfin in the real estate business, which is just got $110 million to expand, and then you go deeper into the thing and find out that they lost in the $70 million range each year for the last couple of years. So people are investing $110 million in a company that's losing almost that much in a year. Why are they doing that? Because they don't know where else to put their money, and they think because Redfin is doing what they're doing, that they'll be able to come out and make profit sometime. Can you imagine if you invested $110 million in Redfin and the market crashed? What would happen? So when you look at all these little things that we don't really understand and you put them all together, you may say, Bud, maybe I should wait to do anything, or maybe it should scare the hell out of me enough that I should do something, and I should do it quickly. Bubble breaker number 5, the trends and turning points. Right now, it looks like this is more stock stuff. It says it'll signal a major top at the dramatic turning point in mid to late October. Then a 30 to 50 cent crash would further confirm and likely occur into January 2018. We'll keep you updated, he said. And then the 6th bubble breaker, which is, if we look into just a little bit, is pretty interesting, very interesting. The Great China Bubble Burst. Anybody see the 60-minute article about 2 years ago when it showed 26 cities that China has built that are bigger than Miami that are vacant, that were vacant 2 years ago? 26 cities like Miami. So basically what they did to spur on the economy is print money and took that money to develop infrastructure in China, And they brought people from the farms and moved them into these buildings as they built them, thinking that people would sell them, would buy them, because they had a huge middle class coming. So the middle class bought all these condos that they were building in these huge cities. And as soon as the migrant workers finished building the buildings and they paid rent in these units, they said, "The hell with this, we're going back to farming," and they left the cities, and the cities were sitting empty, and they're still sitting empty. And so they this is a good example. They built the largest mall in the world, the largest shopping mall in the world. It says this overbuilding has now reached epic proportions, with cities built for 1 million people each, standing largely empty. The largest mall in the world was turned into a tourist attraction because it had no retail clients. It was built in the middle of nowhere and for no one else. What else do they expect? An estimated 27% of the condos are empty in major cities. They weren't built to fulfill demand. They were built in hopes of that demand. So the economy in China did not increase like they expected it to be. So this is the biggest bubble in the world, and we depend on China, and the rest of the world does too. So perhaps the Middle Kingdom's most volatile and dangerous problem is the cost of its real estate. The real estate in China, which is empty, is substantially more expensive compared to Chinese incomes than any major country in the world. Cities like Hong Kong, Shanghai, and Beijing and Shenzhen are the worst. These cities make Sydney and San Francisco look cheap when compared to median incomes. New condos that are 66 square feet, 6 by 10, are going for $250,000 in Shenzhen, the bubbliest and most industrial market in China. So he says at the end, mark my words, there's another crash coming in China's stock market that will take it down 80% or more from all-time high to the 1,000 level on the whatever. It will start a domino effect that will finally cause the great China real estate bubble to burst more dramatically than any country in the world. The affluent Chinese will worry about their massive real estate gains and holdings when they see the stock market crash. We were thrilled on the beaches when the Chinese started buying in Pinellas County about a year and a half ago. And they're still buying, and they're trying to get money out to continue to buy. But when they get scared and they lose their assets that they gained in China to get the money to buy in Vancouver and San Francisco and New York and Miami, then they're going to default on the real estate they have here, and that will cause a crash. I don't want to end with a crash. I want to end with a bang. So what we're talking about is when you're talking to your customers, we could take any one of these 6 bubbles and say they're bullshit, unless you read about everything we said about each one of these bubbles. There's a certain amount of truth in every one of them, but it's like your truth is your truth and where you get your input from. So take the input that is worldwide, chunk it down to the area that you're dealing with, and then get the trust of your clients, because trust being the currency of the future is, I'll tell you what I hear. I would be, depending upon your personal situation, you may not want to sell now and buy immediately. You might want to sell and rent for a while. You may want to sell and buy with an option to close later, rent with an option to buy. You may want to not sell. You may want to think about the next downturn, how long it will be. The last downturn was a few years. This downturn, most likely with so many bubbles all potentially happening at the same time, maybe a lot longer, even if you considered especially if you consider demographic trends, which Harry Dent says the next upturn where the economy will get really good again is around 2022. So that's 5 years of, he calls it deflation rather than inflation. And he says it's going to be a long time. So if you're prepared to stay in your house for that amount of time or play the market as it's going down and short different real estate sales or invest in stuff, it's all individual, but you as agents have to gain their trust somehow. And most agents going in and saying, oh, real estate, we just never had a better year, so therefore it's going to continue to be that way forever. I would say what close with what Warren Buffett says, one of his favorites that I really like. When people are greedy, be fearful. And when people are fearful, be greedy. Are people fearful now, or are they greedy now? Most are greedy because the prices are going up. Be fearful about that and take the proper action. Next week, we will be talking about 21 reasons why for sale by owners are the best ones to deal with, better than expireds. So thank you. Have a good night. Go over the edge this time. Walter?
I can't wait for next week. Yeah, I had two questions. I didn't want to interrupt, but they have going back to the expires on the 7 contracts. What do you say on 7 contracts? Other than just, I mean, I can see the first one. You kind of go through the script. We still want to sell.
If you look at the script has about, I don't know, an expired listing has about 15 questions on it. If you get all 15 questions answered right at the first time, it's going to be one of the ones that you're going to close in 2 or 3 contacts. Most of you are going to be cut off before you get 2 or 3 questions answered until they're interested. So as you make each contact, you go further on the script. You know, we've had some agents that will go and start on the 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th contact, they start asking them the same questions again.
Right.
That's a good question to ask, because if you have the script and you have their name on the top of the script and you got to the hello on the first part and they say, I'm sorry, the dog just ran out in the street. Goodbye. You write dog ran out in the street and that date. And the next time you call them, you're going to ask them the first question. If you get up to the 3rd question, they say, well, I'm not interested in talking to you for the next couple of weeks. Then you made it to the 3rd question and you put the date on that you asked the 2nd question and what the answer was. So you're only going to have 5 of these expired listing sheets, right? So you got 1 sheet with 20 on, you got 1 with 5, and then you got 5 scripts with 1 name on each. If one of them lists with you, then that becomes a listing. Now you only got 4 of those sheets you're working on.
Right.
So you can manage this thing very simply by doing that system. And it's fun when you do that, because if you, and I have a sample somewhere of for sale by owners where we had started out with 5, and then I tracked over 60 days what happened to the 5, and at the end of 60 days that agent had talked to 20. The 5 had increased to 20, and some were never going to sell. 6 were like listed with someone else, and 4 were listed by the agent that did it. So when they looked at that after 2 months of taking that UCF with 5 for sale by owners, the 5 went to 4, then it went back to 5. Now they had 6 lines covered, then 1 listed with someone else. So now you had 7 covered. And by the time you got 2 months in, you had all 20 of those. And some of them were never did list. So now you got that spreadsheet that you can call 6 months from now or a year from now and find. So it's still, you got information on them. So I mean, you can do it online and all that other stuff better, but I like it visually because I'm old. What was the second question?
Oh, well, same thing. If, again, for 7 owners and expires, it's best to do. I guess it makes sense because they're the ones that are actually trying to sell. Why only limit to 5 on each one? Because now you're basically just saying I'm just going to limit my active business just to 10 contacts.
Well, the 7 contacts is not a, you know, I was in the travel industry. It took 7 contacts.
No, not contacts for each individual. I mean, that's like if working for Expire is such a good deal, why only limit to 5? If I can get 10 people to talk to me, why don't I go for the 10 instead of just 5?
Good question, because if the ones that the agents I've dealt with that really want to focus on, before you can eliminate one, you have to have another to replace it with. So you better have a reason to get rid of the one that you haven't been working properly. So if you just have to focus on the 5, you're going to burn out the 5 as quickly as you can so you can get more. But to get 7 contacts average on 5 is about all you can work. And for you, David, do it the way I say it. And after a month or 2 of doing this, you'll find out that, thank God, you're only working 5, because you're going to find they'll turn over faster and you'll get listings because you don't get to know them well enough. You know, you got 5 contacts with Mr. Jones, but you never talk to the wife, and she's the decision maker. So now you got to find her. So maybe you're going to go there on Saturday because you've already made 5 contacts. You got a lot of time invested in them. So you're going to go out of your way to go over before you get rid of them, because you put the new one on, you got 1 contact on. You got to start all over. So it's better to burn out all the other ones quickly to get top production. So it's like a machine. If I was paying you $100,000 a year, that's exactly what I'd say to do. And before you put a line through one, you tell me, why are you putting the line through one? Well, because he was nasty to me. Well, so what? Does he need to sell? Yeah, he does. Well, you only made 4 contacts and he got nasty, but he needs to sell. So what can we do to him, with him, to get him to talk to you?
We have a question from Jan Stern. She said, did you really mean price per foot in Pinellas Park is $200,000, Intercoastal $400,000, Gulf $1.5 million?
Price of lots in Pinellas Park is $20,000, then $200,000, then $400,000, then $1.5 million. And I can back up those prices. Now, one of the challenges that you have, if a lot on a canal is worth $400,000 and it has a house on it, you can buy a house on a canal for $400,000. The land's worth that. The house is basically worth nothing. But one of the challenges on the beach is that the people don't realize that the house is worth nothing, because people are continuing to buy them because agents like us are not telling them what the problems are. You buy an old crummy house, and we're seeing it every day. Jim and I were talking about the house across the street. That house across the street, the lot's worth $400,000. The guy would probably sell the house for $650,000. All right, that'd be a good house to buy if you were going to live in it for 2 or 3 years, or you're going to pay cash, and you're not going to move in there and put $200,000 in updating it, because it's a tear down. When insurance prices go up or a storm comes in, that thing's going to flood. Look, it's below the street. So, but you're finding people that don't pay that money. And the guy, I don't know what it's worth, but if you went over and asked him, he'd probably say $800,000 or $900,000. It's got a wide open view down a canal that catches all the trash from every boat. So that's one of the good things about where we work, because if you know all these things that are going on and share, some dude from Tampa coming in to sell something doesn't realize that. Walter's got a problem selling his house right now. It's got one of the best views along all the beaches, 180 feet on wide open canal The house is a solid house that is not in good condition and it's built on the ground. But man, what a wonderful house to live in. It's $1,000,001. The lot next door, which isn't as big and isn't as nice, vacant, is $1,000,004. So a lot on the canal is worth, a 50-foot lot on the canal is worth 400,000. 50 foot into 400,000 is 8,000 a front foot, compared to 30,000 on the Gulf of Mexico. So if it's 8,000 on a canal, on a crummy canal, 8,000 a front foot, Walters times 185 feet, 8,000 times 185 feet comes out to what? $1,600,000, $1,800,000. This house on the market at $1,000,001. So basically, you're getting a lot for $1,000,001 with a free house on it, right? So if someone had the ultimate, they wanted the ultimate lot, 100-foot boat slip, come on.
So now, be honest, why do you think it isn't selling? I know the answer. A few people have been buying, had to run into walls.
Yeah, well, yeah, the answer is being a for sale by owner and a personality, analytical type personality that will try to justify any position. He pisses them off. When they tell him that there's something wrong with the house, he gives them 87 reasons why that's not wrong with the house. But it's just like all of us. Going and selling our own house is a bad decision because we're emotionally tied to it, and especially with a wife. I mean, if she were selling the house, showing the house to everybody, could you imagine?
She'd take a pretty statement of that.
Yeah, she'd shoot them.
She would too. That's just the way it
I think
works.
it's probably true across the board with for some owners. It's not just athletic. I mean, you got to be a pretty free person to say, hey, this is just the house is a piece of crap. I mean, you know, and you say because of the owners there, I think that restricts a lot of free flow of information. Whereas an agent, you can freely talk to an agent and say, all right, well, maybe we can negotiate. You know, maybe it's not as bad as what you think it is.
Yeah, what?
The buyer. There was a buyer. But his own realtor fired him.
Yeah, but the buyer had probably spent $1,000 on inspections,
More than 5,000.
and then beat the hell out of his price. Came up with a very good price to start with, and then every time he got an inspection, he lowered the price to for sale by owner until he pissed him off so bad that he's buried in the backyard.
And you fired him too.
Yeah, I fired him too.
That's why there's a new pool going underneath there, right? Gotcha.
Okay. When we talk about the economy, is that getting me in trouble?
No. No. People talk about economy all the time. Don't have some information she gave today. I think it's all good. I don't know.
But, you know, if we take your situation, just came up with a building that she lives in that has a major lawsuit of the association that could affect special assessments for other people, as well as having a bunch of units on the first floor that are going to be hit with flood insurance, which those things right there would make that building unsaleable or very tough to sell in a year or two. So here we have an agent that's lived in the building for 30 years, 40 years.
But my building doesn't have the lawsuit. The other building.
Okay, now
I
notice,
just had the flood problem.
notice she's on the defensive a little bit.
Yeah.
There's two buildings, but you think they're exactly the same, but one doesn't have all the hair on it, the other one does. But do you think the negatives of one may scare someone else from the other one? And maybe it is a time for someone to think, if she believes the economy is going to go down, that she ought to get out now while all these other factors are happening. But she spent 40 years in the same thing. Imagine the trauma involved in making that move in case everything that I just said was wrong. And then everything that on the lawsuits and the flood insurance and all that was wrong.
But,
Huh?
but,
Yeah.
But
But
flood insurance, yeah. I guess, there's three things.
and the loss of value by adding lawsuits to other buildings is going to hurt because it's going to hurt others with their home and they're going to get out, they're going to lower the price, and people are buying.
They do have an umbrella policy. And have $5 million, $65 million.
That wasn't enough.
Well, it'll cover the lawsuit, but the exact matter is they're making us look up. Just because they haven't funded it. It's still, you have to reserve. These people have no money.
Well, if they solve all the problems, they solve the problems in the building in a year. In a year and a half, the people in that building that can sell will probably sell. Those prices will be lower than the prices of the ones in the building.
I do know. I know I've been here for long, I can't imagine moving. 500 buildings always have problems. They're going to have to use that as cost management. And that's probably not how that-
There's a different.
Yeah, different. Yeah. They have small management, Vermont. But, okay, we have, this is Rampart.
yeah, it's probably happening
They manage to take people to tennis, they
quarter,
manage park work projects on Beach Drive, they manage my building.
No,
they would have taken on a golfer.
No.
He was trapped.
Yeah, I didn't see 40.
Well, I think it's, oh, that's not the.
Oh.
Is that, that is not the
Let's
same.
change it to Carseway.
Yeah.
Yeah, I might mention that.
Yeah, and change anything, since you don't have a common pool.
So since the condo docs, we're gonna change it anyway. Just everybody wants to change. Change the name.
Actually, I think Justin.
I think I would.
Actually, right.
Because they have so many.
No.
No, I canceled that.
Oh.
My mom just has flood insurance. And
Alright,
the
we just
problem
brought
with
it
that
forward.
is they never even addressed what this is in the contract.
And we set it up.
Thank
Get
you.
a special assessment and
We actually have an
a
inspection.
big sign.
Really, this third.
Swing by after. Really fast. As far as, I don't think it takes that long.
Actually, you're here for 40, almost all the
But
way
it's
up.
part of flood insurance, nobody's ever said how time was important to me.
So it's been easier because we. Okay. But I said, look, then I'm going
What do you have in mind?
I think I should do a pasta salad and. Well, I didn't think the meatball starters, but I
I always thought
mean.
that it was just.
I thought they would know what they were doing.
More popular sidewalk.
I do too.
But that has to do with first make more.
Yeah, I actually,
I got it. I'm trying to make money off of it.
they're all.
Okay.
On those ends.
Just further down.
Yeah, that's like a little rough for it. That's not-
Just south of us, second.
Yeah, you're on top of your point.
Outlier. Well, sure. Well, what about the legislatures?
Well, the best thing, we found that.
Grandfather and then
Nobody knows Jim White, everyone knows.
flood insurance.
Well, they will.
Not
but
picking
that
up
means
on stuff.
it's going to
Probably think everybody knows Jim White.
But they're gonna grandfather the people who have that now. You know, they're, don't you think?
No, that's funny.
That's awesome. Love it. You're on your way, that's great.
Next person, your doctor has to be grandfather.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you know how to do it?
Yeah. I was thinking that, but no one was at Vegas and it's still 3:25. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you can say commissions. And basically,
She's realizing now.
That's it, well, you said 2 hours. That's wonderful. All right. You guys can get what I want to see for the number 2. Yeah. I can see what you're saying, yeah, because no, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, it just looks like, you know, we dominate the I thought I should have built it.
Our agent is 15 guys.
That's all it does. I'll text you. See, because I've been between me and Rachel, one of us here all night. I think we're weekend.
I'm just being funny. It wasn't a joke.
Yeah.
I can do distractions. I try to work out. That's my problem. Our daughter was 13. We were like wondering, like, the first time, like, over a decade, we just had.
Well, if you want to know that have one way of office,
We felt guilty, but we were like.
I have a breakfast up in front, and so I invited them to come, but they have agents from several different breakfasts, it's not just fellow breakfasts. Yeah, I'll.
Oh, yeah.
Congratulations. Thank you. The one that I picked up, when I first started. But, yeah.
Right, well, okay, this is that, my features per click, which is per click. All right, so you can actually hyper-terrorize one of your competitors. Just keep clicking on it. Wow, man. Right. God, it's very easy to click. Find your website, click on it.
Yeah, I always didn't know if I should go back. They call me Jimmy, James, Jason. Like the only name where you feel like I'm
All right.
So you come down here, you just say, this is the best song. This is the best song.
They celebrate their lawsuit to Sunday.
First, because that's just right down the street from our office. And the time there used to be a party office. A lot of drinking, a lot of early drinking, a lot of early partying going on. Yeah, Dean Rocks, yeah. But it wasn't a lot for people to start drinking at 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Yeah, okay. Oh, my gosh. This is hard at work. I need to go out. They're coming to make calls. They're sitting around with me drinks. I'm like, I'm not approved when it comes to drinking at all. I'm looking trying to work.
Well, my guy is an attorney.
Yeah.
Oh, and that's what one of the guys tried to tell me. He said, I do better on my calls. You know, when I'm just relaxed.
Actually. Well, you know, thanks.
That could be fun, but I just never see
Well,